A dying Vietnam vet needed medicine. His biker son, Reaper, rode 80 miles through a hurricane, crashed, and dragged his broken body into a pharmacy. The arrogant night manager called him a junkie, assaulted him, and kicked him out. That manager was about to learn a brutal lesson. When you attack a Marine who's trying to save another veteran, you don't just get fired. You get a visit from 1,000 of his friends, and they don't care about your store's policy. Before we dive deeper into Story, a story that will shake your faith in the system but restore it in humanity, I need to know, where are you watching this from? What corner of the world are you in right now? Drop your city and your country in the comments below. Let's see how far this beacon of hope can truly travel. Your voice matters. Help us get this channel to 1,000 subscribers. God bless you for joining the family. This story isn't about a pharmacy. It's about an old man in a narrow bed miles away fighting a war he's already supposed to have won. His name is Skip. He's 70 years old, a Vietnam veteran, and he is the moral compass of a forgotten town in the Michigan Rust Belt. His VFW post isn't some dusty bar, it's a sanctuary. It's the place men go when the nightmares come back, the place families go when the pantry is empty. Skip is the man who holds the broken pieces of other men together. He is, in this small, fractured world, the last good man. He is the town's father, their confessor, their rock. And before we see what happens to this good man, before we dive into the storm that's coming for him, I have to know, where are you watching this story unfold? Drop your city, your state, or your country in the comments right now. Let us know where the family is tuned in from, because this story, it's about family. Skip's suffering began quietly. A routine surgery, something simple. But now, a post-operative infection has set in, something virulent and terrifying. He's in a small, underfunded county hospital. The walls are a faded yellow, the equipment is old, and the smell of industrial antiseptic can't quite cover the odor of despair. This isn't a place of healing, it's a place of waiting. The system is already strained to the breaking point. The specific threat is a superbug MRSA. It's tearing through his aging body with brutal efficiency. The hospital's pharmacy is out of the one specific fourth-generation intravenous antibiotic that can stop it. The standard drugs have all failed. This isn't just a sickness, it's a sea, and Skip is losing. His body, which survived the jungles of Southeast Asia, is being betrayed by a microscopic enemy here at home. The ticking clock is deafening. The doctor, young, overworked, and hollow-eyed, was blunt with the men waiting at the VFW. Skip has hours, maybe 12, maybe less. The infection is moving toward his heart. The only supply of the drug, the only vial in an 80-mile radius, sits on a shelf in a 24-hour Pharma5 in downtown Detroit. Separating Skip from his salvation is a biblical rainstorm and 80 miles of slick, dark highway. In that sterile room, Skip is the definition of vulnerability. He lies under a single thin white sheet, his breathing shallow, his skin pale. This is the man who faced ambushes in the Tet Offensive. The man who pulled his brothers from burning Hueys. Now he is laid low by an invisible enemy, in a place that is supposed to be safe but is failing him completely. He is helpless. Back at the VFW post, the phone call has been received. A heavy, suffocating silence fills the room. These are hard men who haven't shown weakness in decades, but they feel a cold knot of dread in their stomachs. Skip is their anchor. Without him, they are adrift. He's the one who organizes the toy drives for Christmas, the food bank collection, the sober living meetings. He is their center. This isn't just about one man's life, it is about what he represents. In a cynical world of broken promises and political divides, Skip is the _proof_. He is the walking, breathing proof that loyalty, honor, and community still mean something. He is their lighthouse in the fog, and that light is flickering, threatening to go out. We see the desolation of his hospital room. A single fluorescent light hums overhead, buzzing like an insect. The beep of the heart monitor is weak, struggling, unsteady. The system has failed. The hospital is helpless. The bureaucracy of suppliers and insurance companies has left him here to die. He is utterly and completely alone, save for the machines that are fighting a losing battle. The entire narrative of this town, of these men, now shrinks to a single tiny vial of medicine, 80 miles away. The forces of nature, the failing infrastructure, and the indifference of the system have all aligned against him. He doesn't just need a cure. He needs a miracle. He needs someone who doesn't care about the rules, the storm, or the odds. The VFW post is thick with the smell of stale beer, old wood, and a new suffocating fear. The call from the hospital hangs in the air like smoke. Men sit frozen, staring into their hands, unable to process the news. But one man stands up. He is the antithesis of the sterile hospital. He is Reaper. He's in his early 40s, a veteran of Fallujah, not Vietnam. His head is shaved, His beard is braided, and his arms are a tapestry of ink, telling stories of war and loss. He is the Sergeant 8-Arms of the Forgotten Sons MC. To the outside world, Reaper is the monster in their peripheral vision. He is the man mothers pull their children away from at the gas station. His leather cut is his armor, bearing the patches of his allegiance. He is 6'4", built like a refrigerator, and his eyes, when he isn't with his brothers, are dead. He is what society fears. A man who has seen the void and is no longer afraid of anything. He is the wolf at the door, but in this room, he is just a son. Skip is the only man who ever saw past the armor. When Reaper came back from Iraq, he was a ghost, living in a bottle and waiting for the end. Skip found him. Skip sat with him in the dark. Skip didn't offer platitudes or prayers. He offered purpose. He put a hammer in Reaper's hand and told him to fix the VFW roof. Skip saved his life, not in a firefight, but in the long, quiet war that comes after. So when the news comes that Skip is dying, Reaper doesn't hesitate. He doesn't process, he acts. He grabs the keys to his bike from the bar. His road captain preacher puts a hand on his arm. Reap, the storm is biblical. Take the truck. It's safer. Reaper just shakes his head, his eyes already locked on the mission. He holds up the crumpled, faxed prescription from the hospital. Truck's too slow. Traffic on the 94 will be a crawl. The bike ... I can cut through. This is the act of kindness. It is not small. It is not simple. It is a deliberate choice to ride into the teeth of a torrential, freezing Michigan downpour. It's an 80-mile suicide run on a Harley-Davidson, where the road is invisible and the crosswinds are strong enough to flip a car. He is risking his life, not for money, not for glory, but out of a loyalty so profound it's elemental. He is paying a debt that can never truly be repaid, but he will die trying. The other men in the room, his brothers in the club, watch him. They know this look. It's the same look he had in Anbar province. It's a terrifying, unbreakable focus. He pulls on his heavy leather gloves, the knuckles reinforced. He zips up his cut. He is strapping on his armor for a different kind of war, a race against time and nature. The stakes are just as high as they ever were in the desert. He walks out into the maelstrom. The rain hits him like tiny needles, an instant cold shock. His bike, a customized Harley Street Glide, sits gleaming under the single yellow porch light of the VFW. It's a machine, built for power, not for this kind of weather. It's a brute, and only a brute like Reaper can control it in this daily. This is loyalty made manifest in iron and steel. He throws his leg over the seat. The leather cracks, wet and cold. He doesn't bother with a full-face helmet, just his standard skid lid and a pair of clear goggles. He needs to see everything. He needs the exposure. The pain will keep him sharp. He clicks the goggles down and the world goes quiet, muffled by the roar of the wind. Then he hits the ignition. The engine doesn't just start, it explodes. A deep, guttural _Viet_Win_ roar that cuts through the sound of the rain. It's the sound of American thunder, a promise of violence. It's a war cry sent out into the void. To the neighbors, it's a nuisance. To the men inside, it's the sound of hope. It's the sound of their Sergeant 8-Arms going to work. Reaper revs the engine once, twice. A plume of white exhaust vanishes into the black rain. He thinks of Skip, of the old man's hand on his shoulder. You ain't broken, son. You're just unfinished. Reaper is going to finish this. He eases off the clutch, the massive rear tire spinning for a second on the wet asphalt before finding purchase, and then he is gone. He vanishes into the wall of water, a single red taillight swallowed by the darkness. This act is the ultimate statement of his code. The world sees a thug, a criminal, a degenerate. They see a menace. What they don't see is the hero. They don't see the man willing to ride through hell for the only father he ever knew. The society that judges him, the people who lock their car doors when he pulls up next to them at a light, they are all sleeping safely in their beds. They are protected by rules and laws. Reaper operates by a different, older code. It's the code of the soldier, the code of the blood pack, and that code is absolute. He hits the highway. The wind is a physical blow trying to rip him from the bike. The rain is so thick his headlight barely penetrates 10 feet. It's like riding inside a waterfall. Every car that passes sends up a tidal wave of spray, blinding him completely. He is riding on pure instinct, on muscle memory, and on the burning, desperate need to save Skip. The club members, his brothers, stand on the porch of the VFW, watching the last flicker of his light disappear. They are terrified. They know what this storm is. They know the odds, but they also know Reaper. They know that short of a direct act of God, he will either come back with that medicine or he will not come back at all. This is the shock of the story. The act of kindness isn't a simple gesture. It's a monumental risk. The innocent protagonist, Skip, is passive. The feared hero, Reaper, is the one performing the selfless act. He is the one putting his life on the line. He is the one who is pure in his motivation, driven by a love that the outside world would never believe he was capable of. His appearance, covered in leather and patches, is a fortress designed to keep the world out. But inside that fortress is an unbreakable core of loyalty. And as he disappears into the storm, a force more powerful than the wind is propelling him, the desperate, loving heart of a son on a mission to save his father. 80 miles. It's not just a distance, it's a gauntlet. On the open stretch of I-94, the storm is a living entity. The rain isn't falling. It's being fired horizontally. A billion icy bullets trying to penetrate his leather. Reaper is a solitary, dark shape moving at nearly 90 miles an hour, a lone ship in a black, raging ocean. His focus is absolute, a meditative trance where the only thing that exists is the mission. He isn't riding underscore through underscore the storm. He is at war underscore with underscore it. Every gust of wind from a passing semi is an attempt to rip him from the bike, but he holds the line, his knuckles white. All he sees is Skip's face, pale and waning in that sterile hospital bed. It happens at mile 65, just past the Ann Arbor exit. A flash of brown fur and white-tailed panic. A full-grown buck, terrified by the thunder, leaps the median, landing directly in the high-intensity beam of Reaper's headlight. There is no time to brake. There is no time to swerve. There is only the sickening, visceral underscore thud underscore of 800 pounds of steel colliding with 200 pounds of animal. The impact is a wet, heavy explosion. A sound of crunching bone and immediate catastrophic failure. The bike's front end shatters, the wheel locking as the deer is pulverized, thrown tumbling into the darkness. The laws of physics are immediate and merciless. The Harley, its front fork mangled, lurches violently sideways. Reaper is thrown. He doesn't slide. He is launched. A cannonball of leather and flesh, flying through the black, rainy air. He lands on his left shoulder, impacting the asphalt with a sound like a side of beef hitting concrete. A distinct, sickening underscore pop underscore echoes inside his helmet, and the world goes white with pain. He tumbles, rolling, as his bike, his beautiful, custom-built machine, screeches behind him. A 70 mph shower of sparks and metal tearing itself apart on the highway. He comes to a stop in the gravel of the shoulder, 10 yards from the wreckage of his bike. For a moment, there is only the sound of the rain. Then the pain floods in. It is a symphony of agony. His left shoulder is dislocated, the bone clearly protruding from the joint. He can feel the sharp, shattered ends of at least 2 ribs grating against each other with every shallow, desperate breath. He looks down. His left leg, which was pinned under the bike for a second, is mangled. His jeans are shredded, and the gash beneath is deep, arterial, and already painting the gravel a dark, rain-diluted crimson. A normal man would stay down. A normal man would call 911. A normal man would accept defeat. But Reaper is not a normal man. He is a sergeant in arms. He's a son on a mission. The image of Skip's failing. Heart monitor flashes in his mind. Underscore get up. Get up. He's dying. Underscore the pain is just noise. The mission is the signal. Failure is not an option. He grits his teeth, tasting the copper of his own blood, and he begins to crawl, dragging his ruined leg behind him through the mud and rain. He reaches the bike. It's a disaster. Lying on its side, the engine stalled, the headlight pointing uselessly at the muddy embankment. It smells gasoline and hot oil. So using his one good arm and his one good leg, he shoves his knee under the frame. He lets out a guttural roar, a sound more animal than human, and he heaves. The 800-pound machine resists, but Reaper's loyalty is heavier. Adrenaline and pure, unadulterated love course through him. He screams as his shoulder joint grinds, but he lifts the bike upright. It is standing. He swings his bleeding leg over the seat, hissing in agony. He thumbs the ignition. The engine sputters, choked on rain and its own trauma. Come on, baby. Don't do this. He tries again. It sputters, then catches, exploding back to life with a defiant, wounded roar. It is as stubborn as its rider. He pulls back onto the highway, a broken man on a broken machine, leaking blood and oil. The last 15 miles are a blur of pure torture. Every bump is a fresh stab of agony. He's shivering violently now, the shock and blood loss setting in. Finally, through the deluge, he sees it. The 24-hour Pharmasave. It's a beacon of sterile, fluorescent light in the suburban wasteland. It promises relief, safety, and medicine. He pulls into the empty parking lot, the bike hissing and steaming. He can barely get the kickstand down. He falls off the machine more than he dismounts, his ruined leg collapsing beneath him. He drags himself to his feet, a horrifying apparition of leather, rainwater, and blood, and stumbles toward the automatic doors. He is a muddy, bleeding soldier entering a pristine church. The doors slide open with a gentle electronic underscore whoosh underscore. The contrast is staggering outside a biblical storm. Inside, the quiet hum of air conditioning and soft, piped-in music. He leaves a trail of wet, bloody boot prints on the polished white linoleum floor. He is a disruption. He is everything this clean, orderly place is designed to keep out. And at the back, under the sign that says pharmacy, stands Brian. Brian is the night manager. He's a small man who peaked in high school and now wields his tiny kingdom of pills with the arrogance of a feudal. Lord Brian sees Reaper stumble in. He takes in the cut, the blood, the tattoos, the desperate, wild look in his eyes, and his mind is instantly made up. He doesn't see a man in need. He sees a threat. He sees a drug-seeking degenerate. He sees a problem to be solved. Brian leans back, crossing his arms, a smirk of superiority on his face. He is the gatekeeper. He is the law. Reaper shambles to the counter, his good hand clutching the soaked, blood-smeared prescription and Skip's credit card. He slaps him on the laminate, leaning heavily on the counter to keep from collapsing. Need this? Reaper gasps, the words catching in his throat. It's for Skip. VFW. At the hospital, he pushes the items forward. He's dying, please. He is begging. This mountain of a man, this decorated Marine, this warrior is reduced to a desperate, pained plea. He is offering the system a chance to work. He is trusting the process. He is showing his throat. And Brian, the system's anointed representative, decides to cut it. He doesn't just want to refuse, he wants to humiliate. Brian looks at the prescription, then at Reaper with a disgust so pure it's almost theatrical. Not a chance, Brian says, his voice dripping with condescension. He uses a pen to push the soggy, bloody paper back toward Reaper, as if touching it might contaminate him. Okay, I'm not filling a high-grade antibiotic for a junkie like you. You're probably just going to shoot it. He taps the credit card. And I'm guessing you stole this. Skip right, I'm not an idiot, buddy. The jig is up. I know you're kind. This is the moment the system fails. It isn't just bureaucracy. It's active, malicious prejudice. It's the judgment of a small man given just enough power to destroy. No ... please, Reaper groans, the desperation making his voice sound like gravel. He tries to push himself up to look intimidating, as is his instinct, but the pain in his shoulder makes him wince and sag. You don't understand. He's a vet. He's... The effort to speak is too much. His pained, desperate display only confirms Brian's assumption. This is the behavior of a cornered addict. Brian sees this weakness and he decides to crush it. He wants to be the hero of his own small, sad story. That's it, Brian announces, loud enough for the security cameras he imagines are watching. You're trespassing. I'm calling the police. He reaches for the phone behind the counter, his fingers already dialing 911. You have 10 seconds to get out of my store before I have you arrested for aggravated assault. He feels powerful. He's standing up to the big, scary biker. He's protecting the pharma-save from the dregs of society. Reaper, in a last desperate act, reaches out with his good hand to grab the prescription from the counter. He's not attacking, he's pleading. Just ... listen ... but Brian panics. He thinks he's being attacked. Don't you touch me. He screams, his voice cracking in adolescent fear. He bursts from behind the relative safety of the pharmacy counter, and he does the one thing that seals his fate. He doesn't just push Reaper, he shoves him hard, directly on the protruding, dislocated joint of his shattered left shoulder. A sound comes out of Reaper. It is not a roar of anger. It is a shriek of pure, unadulterated agony. The pain is absolute. A white-hot, blinding flash consumes his consciousness. The force of the push, combined with the pain, sends him backward. His bleeding leg gives out completely. He stumbles, crashing to the linoleum floor. The automatic doors slide open as if to mock him. Brian, terrified by the scream he caused, shoves him again with his foot, forcing him out of the store. Reaper collapses onto the wet concrete sidewalk on his hands and knees in the pouring rain. He is broken. He failed. He rode through a storm, survived a crash that should have killed him, lifted an 800-pound machine with broken bones, only to be defeated by a pharmacy clerk in a blue smock. He drops his head, the rain washing the blood from his face, and he lets out a sound of pure despair. The system, the safe world, has cast him out. Brian stands in the doorway, panting, high on his victory. He looks down at the monster crawling in the rain. He feels like a king. He turns to go back inside to his warm, bright fortress. But what Brian, in his fluorescent-lit castle, didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that the Sergeant Hart, arms never rides alone. On a mission this important. Across the street, parked in the pitch-black lot of a closed-down big boy diner, his brothers had been his silent overwatch, 100 of them, and they just watched their sergeant, a wounded war hero, get assaulted and thrown into the street. Across the street, in the flooded big boy parking lot, a single-gloved hand raised. It was Preacher, the club president. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. He just watched Brian, this small, pathetic man in a blue smock, shove his foot into Reaper's chest. He saw his brother, his sergeant-at-arms, a man who took bullets for his country, collapse onto the rain-slicked asphalt. Preacher lowered his hand. That was it, the signal. What happened next was not a sound Brian understood. It was deeper, more guttural. It was the sound of 114 cubic-inch Milwaukee engines turning over, all at the same instant. It was not ignition. It was an underscore eruption, a synchronized mechanical roar that was less a sound, and more a physical blow, a vibration that rattled the cheap glass of the pharmacy windows. Brian, frozen in the doorway, heard it. He thought it was a low-flying aircraft or a transformer exploding from the storm. He turned his gaze from the broken man at his feet and looked across the street, and his world ended. What he saw was a single, massive, 100-eyed beast. 100 high-intensity LED headlights flashed on as one, a blinding wall of light that instantly, terrifyingly pierced the rain. He was illuminated in a harsh, accusatory spotlight, a terrified rabbit caught in the gaze of a pack of... He was the center of an attention he never, ever wanted. His breath caught in his chest, a cold, sharp stone of pure, undiluted panic. In perfect, terrifying unison, the bikes began to move. They didn't just pull out. They surged. This was a river of chrome and black-painted steel, an unstoppable current pouring out of the diner's lot, crossing the 4-lane road as if it were a private driveway. They were an organized, disciplined cavalry moving with a single mind. They flooded the Pharmacive parking lot, taking up every single space, blocking the entrance, blocking the exit, surrounding the building in less than 10 seconds. It was a perfect, suffocating circle of steel. They were not a mob. They were an invasion, and they had just established a perimeter claiming this small piece of corporate America as their own. Brian stumbled backward into the store, his mind unable to process the scale of it. This wasn't a gang, this was an army. Reality was fracturing. He looked at Reaper, then back at the sea of engines. The bikers cut their motors, and the silence that fell was 1,000 times worse than the noise. It was a heavy, terrible, waiting silence. It was the sound of judgment. The only sounds left were the tick dash tick dash tick of cooling engines, the relentless drumming of the rain, and the new, ragged, high-pitched sound of Brian's own breathing. He was hyperventilating, his knees weak. The bikers dismounted as one. The sound of 100 heavy leather boots hitting the wet pavement was a single, solid thud. Then came the sharp clack of 100 kickstands hitting the asphalt, a sound like 100 rifles being cocked. They were giants. Every man, clad in leather, wearing the same Forgotten Sons patch that Reaper wore. They were a wall of muscle and menace, but they didn't look at Brian. They didn't look at the store. Their eyes, every single pair, were fixed on one man, their fallen brother, who was still trying to push himself up from the concrete. Their focus was total, their loyalty a visible, palpable force. 2 men immediately pushed to the front. These were Doc and Stitch, the club's medics, one a former Navy corpsman, the other a surgeon who rode with them on weekends. They carried a heavy-duty military trauma kit and knelt beside Reaper, instantly shielding him with their own bodies from Brian and the storm. Shoulders out, Doc said, his voice calm, professional, cutting through the tension. At least 2 ribs are busted, and he's bleeding bad from the leg. They began with practiced battlefield efficiency to cut away Reaper's bloody jeans, to apply a combat tourniquet high on his thigh. Their brother was the only priority. Preacher, the club president, finally swung his leg off his bike. He was older, in his 60s, with a long gray beard braided with steel ring, and eyes that had seen everything this world had to offer, and none of it impressed him. He was the only one who looked at Brian. He didn't rush. He walked slowly, deliberately, his boots heavy on the pavement, each step an earthquake in Brian's collapsing world. He walked past the disoriented, terrified Brian, who was still fumbling in his pocket for his phone, and pushed the automatic door button. He walked inside the pharmacy, bringing the smell of rain and ozone with him. Brian finally got his phone out, his hand shaking so violently he could barely unlock it. 9.1, he whispered, his thumb hovering over the green call button. I'm calling the police. You're all trespassing. This is an illegal gathering. A riot. He looked up, trying to find his courage. Preacher was inside. 2 more massive bikers, the club's enforcers, men who looked like they could tear the steel doors off their hinges, stood flanking the doorway, blocking the only exit. They folded their arms and just watched him, their expressions flat, patient, and utterly devoid of fear. They were waiting for him to make the call. Go ahead, son. Call him, Preacher said, his voice a low, calm rumble that vibrated in Brian's chest. Tell him to send everyone. Hell, tell him to call the governor. Tell him to send the National Guard. Preacher walked past the seasonal aisle, past the cold and flu section, his boots leaving wet tracks on the linoleum. He walked right up to the pharmacy counter. He looked at the phone in Brian's hand, then at Brian's name tag. They can't help you, Brian. You've made a mistake that no uniform can fix. The power in the room had shifted so completely it had sucked the air out. A police cruiser on a routine patrol saw the mass of bikes. The officer slowed, his spotlight hitting the crowd. He was a local cop. He knew these patches. He saw the men tending to Reaper. He saw Preacher inside. The officer didn't get out. He didn't hit his ease. Siren. He just picked up his radio, his voice tight. Dispatch. You're gonna need to send ... everyone, the whole damn department. The Forgotten Sons are at the Pharmasave on 12 Mile. No violence, not yet, but they are ... all of them. It's the whole chapter. He knew this wasn't a riot. It was a reckoning. Preacher leaned over the counter, his presence looming. He saw the soggy, bloody prescription still sitting there, a discarded piece of trash next to Skip's credit card. He picked it up with 2 gloved fingers, holding it as if it were a sacred text, a soldier's last will. He held it up for Brian to see. This prescription, he said, his voice devoid of anger, which was somehow more terrifying, is for Skip. He's a Vietnam vet. He's the man who founded our post, and he's dying, right now, in a hospital, because you don't have this medicine. The man you just kicked, Preacher continued, his eyes boring into Brian, is my sergeant at arms. He's a Marine decorated for valor in Iraq. He rode through that hurricane, crashed his bike so hard it's now junk, broke his goddamn body, and crawled in here to save a dying man. And you ... Preacher's voice dropped to a whisper. You called him a junkie. You put your _foot_ on him. Brian was shaking, tears of pure terror welling in his eyes. I didn't know. I thought he was robbing me. I was just following protocol. You _thought_, Preacher interrupted, the word a sharp crack. You judged You played God with a man's life. He slapped the prescription back down on the counter. Now here's what's going to happen, Brian. You are going to go back there. You are going to fill this prescription. You are going to charge it to this card, and you are going to do it in the next 60 seconds. He leaned in closer. Or we are going to ... dismantle this entire store, brick by brick, and we'll find the medicine ourselves. Do you understand me? We are not asking. Brian looked past Preacher out the glass doors. He saw the army. 99 men standing in the rain, a silent, leather-clad jury. They weren't rioting, they weren't looting, they were just ... waiting for the word. They were a coiled snake, a disciplined force of pure, contained rage. And Brian, in his blue smock, had just assaulted one of their officers. His bladder failed. A dark, warm stain spread across the front of his khakis. He was no longer a manager. He was prey. He was a man who had declared war on a nation he didn't know existed. Outside, Doc and another biker had formed a human tent over Reaper, shielding him from the relentless rain as they applied a pressure dressing to his leg. They had a splint for his shoulder. They were tending to their wounded soldier with a gentle expertise that defied their appearance. This wasn't a threat, it was a recovery operation. The perceived menace of this club was, in reality, the most profound act of protection this town had ever. They were a family. They were the thin line, and Brian had just tried to cross it. Brian didn't say another word. He just sobbed. A wet, hiccuping sound. He turned, stumbled over his own feet, and ran to the pharmaceutical shelves behind the counter. His hands, slick with sweat and urine, fumbled with the packaging. He dropped the vial. He picked it up. He frantically tried to work the computer, his corporate training battling his primal fear. He didn't care about rules. He didn't care about his job. He just needed to get them the medicine. He needed them to leave. He was a man drowning, and they were the ocean. The parking lot was no longer a pharmacave. It was a military staging ground. It was a river of polished chrome and wet steel that had flooded the civilized world. Flashing red and blue lights of the approaching police cruisers finally appeared in the distance, but they looked like tiny, insignificant fireflies compared to the massive, dark, and silent power of the suns. The system was coming, sirens blaring, but it was already too late. Justice had already arrived, not in a cruiser, but on a Harley. The police were no longer coming to save Brian. They were coming to negotiate the terms of his surrender. This is the moment, the exact second the scales tip. The bully, who is hiding behind a corporate logo and a title, is now face to face with a power that doesn't care about his rules. If you believe that a man's title shouldn't protect him from accountability. I need you to smash that like button right now. Your engagement proves that this world still values honor over protocol. Show them you're watching. This is the point of no return, where the system's failure is met by the family's righteous, overwhelming force. Brian's small authority has just crumbled to dust against the mountain of their brotherhood. Brian finally bagged the medicine and ran the credit card. A machine beeped. Approved. He stumbled back to the counter and pushed the small white paper bag toward Preacher. He was shaking so hard he could barely let go, but Preacher didn't take it. He just looked at him, his gaze heavy with disappointment. "No," Preacher said, his voice flat. "Our transaction isn't done. You're going to take this bag. You're going to walk outside into the rain, and you're going to apologize to the man you assaulted. You're going to give it to _him_." This wasn't about the medicine anymore. This was about absolution. This was about restoring the honor that Brian had tried to steal. Brian looked at the bag, then at the enforcers at the door, then at Preacher. There was no choice. He took the bag. Preacher stood aside. Brian walked, his legs like jelly, out the automatic doors into the cold rains. He was walking toward the wounded man who was now being tended to, surrounded by a wall of silent, watching bikers. He was a sinner, walking into the center of the Coliseum, forced to face the lion he had prodded. Brian stepped out onto the wet asphalt. The world shrank to a 20-foot circle. The rain was cold, instantly plastering his thin blue smock to his shaking frame, revealing the dark stain on his khakis for all to see. The 100 men were silent, a jury of leather and rain. They parted, creating a narrow, terrifying aisle, a corridor of judgment. At the end of it, Reaper was sitting up, leaning against a bike's wheel, his face pale and etched with agony as Doc worked on his shoulder. Brian walked each step a lifetime. He was forced to confront the humanity of the man he had dismissed as a junkie. He saw the blood, the pain, the exhaustion. He saw the hero. He stopped, trembling, holding the small white paper bag. He couldn't speak. His throat was closed. Preacher's voice came from behind him, calm and hard as stone. "Say it." Brian looked at Reaper. I'm sorry," he stammered, the words pathetic in the open air. I have your medicine." Reaper didn't look at him. He just nodded, his jaw tight with pain. Brian held out the bag. Reaper, with his one good arm, didn't take it. Instead, Stitch, the surgeon, took the bag, inspected the label to confirm the drug, and nodded to Preacher. "This is it. Let's move." Brian was left standing there, holding nothing, completely and utterly irrelevant. His humiliation was not in being yelled at. It was in being dismissed as the insignificant obstacle he was. The arriving police cruisers, sirens now silent, pulled in. The officers, led by a seasoned sergeant, didn't jump out with guns drawn. They saw the bikers, the medics, the wounded man. They recognized Preacher. The sergeant just walked over. Preacher, what's the trouble? Preacher pointed, not at Brian, but at the ambulance now pulling in, which the club had called. My man here, Sergeant, had an accident on the 94 trying to get medicine for Skip at the VFW. This _manager_, he said, gesturing to Brian, refused him service and assaulted him. The sergeant looked at Brian, drenched and shaking, and his face hardened. He'd known Skip for 30 years. He understood immediately. Mr. Preacher, we will handle this. You have my word. The catharsis was swift and total. The ambulance crew, flanked by Doc and Stitch, loaded Reaper, securing him for the hospital. But the medicine? It wasn't going with them. Preacher handed the small white bag to another rider. You know the way. Go. _now_. A different bike, fresh and powerful, roared to life. And with the police cruisers now acting as a full sirens blazing escort, the medicine was rocketed toward the county hospital. The problem was solved. The system, once it was forced to see the truth, was now working _for them. The police were not there to arrest the bikers. They were there to escort the cure, protecting the _real heroes of the night. As Reaper was loaded, Preacher walked over. He unzipped his own cut, the vest bearing his president patch. He took it off in the pouring rain. He folded it with reverence and laid it over Reaper's chest as he lay on the gurney. It was the highest honor, a king covering his wounded soldier with his own flag. You did good, son, Preacher rumbled, his voice thick with emotion. You did the 1%. Skip's gonna be okay because of you. Reaper, his eyes finally closing as the morphine hit, just nodded, his one good hand clutching the leather patch. He was family. He was a hero. The crowd of bikers remained. They watched the ambulance and the police escort speed off. Then, one by one, they turned their attention back to the pharmacy. Back to Brian, who was now being questioned by a very angry police sergeant. The store's regional manager, awakened by a call from Preacher, was already on his way, driving at reckless speeds, promising Brian's immediate termination. The club didn't need to say another word. They just sat on their bikes, their engines off. A silent, powerful occupation. They would wait until they got the call from the hospital that Skip had received the medicine. They were not leaving. Their presence was the verdict. The community, woken by the sirens and the earlier roar of engines, was now watching from their windows. They didn't see a criminal gang. They saw a wounded soldier being tended to by his brothers. They saw the police escorting the club. They saw the manager Brian, the man who sold them their prescriptions, being detained. In one single rain-soaked night, the town's entire perception of the Forgotten Sons was shattered and rebuilt. The monsters who lived on the edge of town were the ones who had just saved the town's most beloved citizen. They were the cavalry. The bikers became a fixture. For the next week, as Skip recovered in the hospital, 2 Forgotten Sons stood guard outside his hospital room, 24/7. They were silent, stoic, and unmovable. The hospital staff, initially terrified, began bringing them coffee. They were no longer a threat. They were a shield. The club paid in cash for Reaper's totaled bike, and their insurance, run by a brother, of course, began a massive civil suit against the PharmaSave chain for the assault on their Sergeant-Aid arms, a suit they would unequivocally win. The justice was absolute. Brian was fired. The PharmaSave Corporation issued a public apology and made a 5-figure donation to the VFW post. Reaper, his arm in a sling, was honored at the next town meeting. But the real victory was quieter. It was the sight of Skip, weak but alive, being wheeled out of the hospital. Not by an orderly, but by Preacher, flanked by his entire club, who had come to take their father home. The lesson was etched into the asphalt of that parking lot. You don't judge a man by his cut, you judge him by his mission. The world is full of gatekeepers like Brian, men who hide behind rules and prejudices, desperate to feel powerful. But true power isn't in a name tag or a title. It's in loyalty. It's in the willingness to ride into a storm for a brother. It's the courage to act when the system fails. The Forgotten Sons knew a truth the civilized world forgets. When the rules fail you, you rely on your family. And sometimes family is the army you build yourself, one patch at a time. Courage isn't just about riding into a storm. Sometimes it's about having the guts to trust the man in leather over the man in the smock. It's about seeing the hero beneath the armor. It's knowing that the people society throws away are often the only ones who will run toward the fire, not away from it. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes are real. They don't always wear capes or badges. Sometimes they wear leather, ride Harleys, and carry the patches of a brotherhood that is stronger than steel. And they never leave a soldier behind.